Hey, it's Whitney from EcoVeganGal.com, and welcome back to the EVG Uncensored channel, in which I share my thoughts and feelings and opinion on things that are not necessarily related to veganism. And this video is definitely, well, I was going to say it's definitely not related, because most of these videos really aren't. But then I paused because I feel like ultimately it's all kind of part of the same thing, which is, if you're passionate about compassion and other people and making the world a better place, then I think a lot of these topics all really tie into the vegan way of life. So today it's Monday, and I usually post on Sundays here. Yesterday I just didn't quite have something that I felt really excited and inspired to share with you. So thank you for your patience in waiting for the next video. I'm a little off the schedule. I'll talk about something at the end of this video, so make sure you watch to the end, because I have something special for people that do, and we'll get to that then. Today I want to talk about how we deal with speaking our minds about something in uncomfortable situations and letting our voice be heard when we're afraid that people might not accept it. This instance was inspired, or this topic was inspired by an instance I had earlier, not too long ago, about an hour ago after yoga. And I was in my yoga class, and this new location of the yoga studio, there is a dog that barks a lot. And it just always seems to happen like this dog barks during Shavasana when we're resting. And today it just was at the point where I thought I really would like to say something about this, because it feels to me kind of unfair to those of us who are paying a lot of money to go to yoga to have a dog that barks continuously and interrupts the flow of it. You pay to go to yoga to get away, to relax, to just kind of experience something good. And if you're paying a lot of money, you want to have a great experience. And this dog I've heard bark many times. There's actually an apartment complex above the yoga studio, and it's not very well insulated for sound there. So it's partially the yoga studio's fault that they didn't insulate it more properly, because you can hear all sorts of things. But I also feel like that they should know about this dog, right? I mean, what if I'm not the only one not feeling frustrated with it? So after class, I went up to the manager and I just kindly said, have you done something about this, or would you do something about this dog? And we had a very short conversation, but she seemed very uncomfortable with me asking her about this, which I thought was very strange, right? I'll get to that, why I feel like that's strange, in a moment. But the conversation kind of went where I started trying to make it clear that this was something that was really bothering me, because I wanted her to take me seriously, not just brush it off. And I explained to her how I was feeling. I explained to her some options, or I suggested some options for how it could be resolved. And, I have a dog, and I've always been very, very considerate of my dog's noise and all of that. I personally would never let my dog bark that much. And perhaps, as the manager suggested, that the person's not home, and there are some solutions, but I feel like when you're a dog owner, or I don't like to use the word owner, when you have a companion dog, you need to be mindful of where you live and how your dog affects other people. So when I lived in an apartment, I was very, very mindful of my dog being quiet, and tried to find all these solutions for keeping her quiet and training her, and it worked, and it was wonderful. I never had a problem with my neighbors, but I always felt if I did have a problem that I would solve it quickly, right? I'm just perhaps one of those people who's just so mindful. I don't want to bother other people. And that's what I explained to the manager. I said, if I have a dog, and I've understood in the places that I've lived that if the dog was loud, that the manager may approach me about it, and that I would be happy to find a solution. So from one dog owner to the other, I figured it's not that big of a deal. But what became a big deal was that the manager of this yoga studio was not very receptive to my feedback. She started to get very uncomfortable and defensive, even though it had nothing to do with her or the yoga studio. All I was asking was if she could approach the manager of this building that they share space with. I figured they have a relationship, right? And if you're running a business, that you should be mindful of what works for your clients, right? But she seemed very uncomfortable with that and started to kind of get a little bit of an aggressive energy. And so my energy actually stepped up a little bit too, where I was just really trying to explain to her that I'm not going to take no for an answer, you know? And anyways, I walked away from this situation feeling energetically off. And I was stepping back to examine it, and that's what I want to share with you today. In those instances, a lot of things can come up. So perhaps if you were in my position, you would first sit there and think about, do you want to say something or not? Okay, so if you don't want to say something, there might be a few things that go through your mind. One, you think, oh, it's not that big of a deal. I'm living in the city, like noise is to be expected. I can't expect this to be solitude. I'm just going to use the yoga practice to work on meditating and enjoying the situation. Of course, that way of practicing and experiencing life, dealing with challenging situations can be applied beyond what I'm going through specifically here. So anytime something irritates you, you can choose to try to stop it. You can choose to deal with it somehow. There's so many different choices there, or you can kind of, become at peace with it, right? And I think that's a really wonderful direction to go in, is can you get to a peaceful place with something? However, I happen to be the type of person that feels like I want to try to do something. And I feel like this actually applies, this is a much bigger message here, right? Why am I the only one that's brought this up yet? My guess is it's not that people aren't slightly bothered. There's going to be different levels. Maybe some people don't even notice it, right? Some of us are more sensitive to sound than others. Although I can't imagine the other people in class did not hear this dog barking when it was completely silent in the room. But perhaps some people just don't find that irritating, right? We all have our triggers. Also, I think the overwhelming majority feels like there's nothing that can be done about it. And that's a huge driving force behind what I do in my life, but also in this specific situation and similar situations really, is I want to see if there is a solution. I'm always aiming to find a solution that makes everyone happy, right? And I also have this drive to make things just. So for me, as I explained earlier, it didn't really feel fair. Why am I supposed to suffer? Maybe that's an exaggerated word for the situation, but I'm placed in an uncomfortable position. Why? I'm paying, right? I'm paying money, hard-earned money to go to yoga. So shouldn't I have the best experience possible? Aren't I entitled to that? Can I at least speak up about something and see if something can be done? That's really how I felt there. And again, as somebody that lives with a dog, I felt compassion for that person, and I felt like something can be done on their end too easily, right? It doesn't have to be a big deal. And so I was really surprised at how the manager dealt with this. Energetically, I could feel something. I don't know exactly what, right? She wasn't communicating her feelings to me, but I could tell that she was uncomfortable. And that made me really uncomfortable. And I left there and I thought, why do I feel uncomfortable about this? Well, number one is that it's always been challenging for me to stand up for something when I'm faced with that type of response. And I don't know if it's something that I'm doing that's triggering that within somebody, but I believe that because I approach things with love and compassion and an open heart, I'm not trying to stir up trouble. I mean, I don't run up to them and go, you need to get this dog to stop. How dare you allow this dog? I was very, very sweet, as sweet as I thought I could be in that moment, right? So I'm not sure that I could have handled it differently than I did, right? So I think that's always an important thing to evaluate. How do we approach situations like that? And approaching situations with so much love and compassion and softness as possible is so important when you're speaking your mind. I felt like that was a check in the box for me in that situation. So the other thing that gets triggered within me is when people get defensive or they push back or they're not receiving me. That is a huge trigger, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's a common trigger for a lot of people, and that may make people prevent people from speaking their minds, right? So even though I walked away from that situation feeling like kind of yucky and like uncomfortable and awkward, and it puts me in this potentially odd situation with that manager who I see almost every day, I feel like that is my one place to work on. And I also never want that to prevent me from speaking my mind, because we never know for sure if that situation's actually going to happen. If I were to fear it, if let's just say after this instance today, I said, ugh, I don't like the way I feel right now. I'm never going to speak up my mind again because I don't want to risk feeling this way. I bet that a lot of people have experienced something like that in their life, and that's why they don't speak up. That's probably why nobody else spoke up about the dog, right? Or said anything about the dog. And I'm sure you can relate to these situations where you wonder why nobody else is doing something. Have you ever been in that spot where you're in a group and something is happening, like a sound or a smell or something that's making you uncomfortable, and you sit there wondering, is anybody else feeling this the same way, this discomfort that I'm feeling? And if so, why aren't they saying anything? And there's actually a really interesting study done about this where it's a human psychological thing, this group mentality. When we're around a lot of other people, we often will not say something, speak up about it, because we assume that if they're not speaking up about it, then we shouldn't. And that is like a major danger zone. And this is actually where it could tie into veganism, because just as human psychology goes, we want to go often with the group mentality. And we feel more comfortable being part of the herd, as it's referred to as. So I think I talked about this in a video before on this channel. I know I talked about it somewhere. This herd mentality, right? We don't want to be left out because we're afraid if we're left behind, if we stand out, if everybody's going one way and we're going the other, that we won't survive. So a lot of little things were at play in the situation that I experienced today, where those emotions started coming up in me, where I felt like maybe I'm going to be ostracized from this yoga studio. Maybe that manager is going to somehow sabotage my ability to stay there, right? Like all these crazy thoughts were going in my head because I felt like she was rejecting me, right? By her reaction. And that's another quick thing I want to say. Really, she should have never approached it that way. I don't know if I've talked about this before, but I have a long history well, yeah, I guess I could say a long history of working in the customer service. I worked for one company in specific where I was very, very well trained in customer service. And it was like the best training, not just for that job, but for life, because I recognized how to treat people with love and respect. And I did not feel that way from her. So my guess is that she's not very well trained, or she hasn't yet found a way to not take things personally or get defensive about things. I mean, it was just horrible communication, not looking at me, like kind of everything changed within her, even though it didn't have to be that big of a deal. What I would have liked her to do is to say, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me see what I can do about this. I'll do my best. Like none of those words came out of her mouth, right? So in a way, she kind of was rejecting me. She was rejecting what I was saying. And it's just so interesting how some people approach it that way. Now I have to work even harder to find a new level of comfort to continue going to this yoga studio when I've already felt rejected by the person that headed up. But coming on back around, my main point with this is that I think it's so important in life to just work through those pain points instead of trying to avoid them. If you are feeling uncomfortable or unsatisfied with something, that feeling alone is worth you saying something, right? So a lot of people say, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm going to choose not to change it because I'm afraid of what will happen if I try, right? So this happened to me, the uncomfortable part, and I tried, and then I was uncomfortable again. So now I'm kind of like two discomforts, right? That is clearly something to be fearful of. Who wants to be uncomfortable? But the risk is worth it for me because there's a chance that if I do something about feeling uncomfortable, both things could be resolved, right? I don't know what's going to happen in this situation. That manager may choose not to deal with it. In that case, I might have to deal with it somehow, right? Because I want to resolve this. But I certainly don't want tension with her. And a lot of people just don't think that situation is worth it, but I do. Because I would rather have an uncomfortable situation with someone else and feel like I did something, that I tried, that I spoke up for something, I tried to fix something, than not try at all. And I think if we can shift that mentality, we grow so much stronger within ourselves. We help the group, right? In this situation, everybody might be uncomfortable, but again, are not willing to risk more discomfort to resolve their current discomfort, right? But if I can step up and do something about it, then I'm actually not just relieving my discomfort, but everybody else's. And that's kind of a huge, what's the word I'm looking for? It's just the way I want to live my life, is that it's not just about me. Most of the things that I stand up for in life are helping other people that are afraid to stand up for it themselves. And not to mention the voiceless, the animals, for example, whoever is unable to stand up. I'm getting a little off track with that thought there, but I know you know where I'm going with this, and I just want to encourage you to stand up for what you feel, to do something when you don't feel comfortable, whether it's emotional discomfort, physical discomfort, situational discomfort, whatever it may be. Trying to do something about it, being proactive about it, taking those risks is so worth it. And this situation here is kind of just like an example, because when I can learn to stand up for myself and work through any discomfort that might happen as a result, it makes me stronger in even bigger situations when it really matters, right? Ultimately, if this dog is going to continue barking and there's nothing that can be done about it, I have two choices. I can either ignore it, learn to love it, or I can just not go to that yoga studio. It's not that huge of a deal. But this might be a smaller version of something much bigger that could have a much bigger impact on me. So I'm actually kind of practicing working through it and standing up for myself and taking a stand for everybody. Right. So it's nothing to do with the dog. It really, as Evie barks right here, she's either agreeing or making a point. But wow, it's such a powerful thing. And when I sat down to record this video today, I didn't quite, a lot of times when I record these videos, I don't quite have the concepts out of my head yet. But now I feel like this was actually a really significant thing that happened today. An insignificant thing turned into something significant. So again, if there's something happening in your life right now, you never know how significant standing up for yourself could turn out to be, even if it's in a small instance. It might be talking to somebody about something that's been bothering you, like a personal thing. It might be asking for a change at work. I mean, there's so many things. And if you kind of step back and think about if there's anything happening now that you want to change, or just remember this for the future when you face uncomfortable situations, and how can you do your best to make a difference, to make something shift? Well, I promised that there would be something else at the end of this video, and it is a video I recorded a few days ago. This video happened as a result of a trigger, as many of these videos are related to, right? Usually something happens in my day that I really want to share. Maybe I'm trying to get it off my chest, or maybe I learned a big lesson and I want to share it with you. I got really fired up about this situation, and it was a combination of me feeling hurt, but then also just being aggravated with situations like this in general. And it's fizzled away a lot. It's not bothering me, or it stopped bothering me shortly after I recorded the video. But the video's there, and I debate sometimes if I want to upload some videos. Like sometimes I record things and I'm like, ooh, like it's a very vulnerable place to really express extreme emotions. So what I'm thinking now is that with videos like that, I'm still going to upload them, but I'm going to mark them as unlisted. And I'm going to include a link to them that only you will find if you know where to look for it. So I'm going to put it down in the description field, and it's just for you most dedicated people. So you'll hear about some of these videos when they come up, and I'll talk about them in the end of another video. It'll be like a little Easter egg, okay? And this specific video is about being judged for our appearances. And there was a couple moments where I got really worked up in the video. So, you may see why I didn't want to like put it public, because I never know who's coming to this channel, and I don't want just random people finding stuff like that. But I consider you a friend. I feel very close to you because you're so committed and part of this community. So I am comfortable sharing that with you as if we were sitting down in person having a chat. So go check that out. Links in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to read your comments, however you want to react to this video. I really love connecting with you. And as I said, sometimes I don't respond to comments, but I always read them. So thank you for writing them. And I'll see you next time. I'll be back on track for my Sunday schedule. Bye.